Learn the most advanced recruiting techniques, land the most desirable talent, launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with Rick Girard.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're talking about the importance of a strong team when shopping to investors. One of the most critical elements to being funded is who the team is and who's leading the charge. My name is Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. The mission of our show is to solve the most difficult hiring challenges to help your company secure the strongest talent. Today our guest is Peter Polydor, CEO and founder of Ergo Capital and the startup accelerator Ergo Excel. In 2014, he founded the Eureka building, which everybody knows here in Irvine, I'm sure. A 3-acre startup and tech community based in Irvine that is designed to foster innovation and house entrepreneurs. The site is home to over 30 companies ranging from startups to a large public company. Peter also sits on the boards of, as well as advisory boards of a number of portfolio companies and startups. Further to his work at Ergo, he's a professor in practice at University of Wales, the charter member of Canadian C100, recipient of Greek 40 under 40, and also Power 30 under 30 awards. He's got more awards than the LA Kings for sure. He received his BA from Occidental College and his MBA from University of Oxford Said Business School. Sorry, I'm having a blah, my tongue is not working today. Peter, thanks for joining us, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show.
Thanks for having me. And, it's a talk show, so you don't have to worry about your tongue, right?
I know. Well, yeah, exactly. For some reason, I have at least one mix-up every episode where my tongue just doesn't work well.
Okay, well, we got it out of the way then.
I know, totally.
Perfect.
So I'm stoked. So points to cover today. I want to cover a couple of things. Number one, the importance of a strong team and what attracts you as an investor. Having a plan and being able to pivot. The strategy for how and when to engage a recruiter and how to recruit people. And also the position your team has to be in order to be attractive to investors. So let's talk about what the ideal company looks like for you as an investor and what you look for in a team.
Sure. Well, any investor, one of the first things we want to see is, okay, great idea, who's building it?
Yep.
And who's behind it, who's driving it, because execution risk is a big part of any investment we do. So from our standpoint, we always look for a couple of different things in teams. One, they got to have the domain expertise.
Sure.
If you're coming to us with a company that's building a technology platform for banks, okay, who's worked in banking?
Yep.
If no one has, that's a red flag.
Yep.
Same things. Okay, so if you're building a tech platform, again, for that bank, great, who's built a platform before?
Yep.
Wait, no one? Okay, another red flag. So whatever you're building, you need to have people who have the expertise and knowledge in those industries, and also you need to have the skill sets needed to build what you're promising your customers you're going to build.
Yep.
And it seems like a very obvious thing, but a lot of the times you'll have companies that find themselves being really weak in those areas, and they haven't even identified it.
Yeah, and I've seen that a lot too. You know, just in various networking events, people who have this great idea for something they're building, but they really don't have any expertise in that area.
Yeah. And they'll even have a great pitch sometimes.
Yeah.
Because they've done their research and they've learned a lot about the industry, which is a good thing. But a lot of the times, you don't know about them in practice, right?
Sure.
So the reason I ask, like, say, a fintech platform for banking, you need to know how banks operate. Mm-hmm. You need to know, okay, what's my entry point into that bank? You need to know, once I'm in that bank, what are the roadblocks I'm going to hit? You know, am I going to have regulatory issues? If I'm touching the core banking systems, that's a whole other can of worms you're opening up.
Oh, absolutely.
And these are the kinds of things that you might not know, have you not actually sat in that chair and dealt with that situation before.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So say they've got a team, and there is some of that expertise. It's there. What else do you look at?
In terms of when we make investments?
Yes.
In the team?
Yeah.
So a lot of things we also like is just past experience, meaning not necessarily, great, you built this at Microsoft or you built this at Google. but you built this incredible platform and team with like 5 people in a startup or 10 people in a startup, or you built it from 5 people to be 200 people. That shows a certain breadth of knowledge and a desire for, or a breadth of knowledge and a desire to be able to adapt.
Sure, and grit to stick with it.
Exactly, because like it's a whole different ball game when it's you and your founder building a company. When it goes from that to hiring your first employee, because all of a sudden now you have this thing called human resources.
Oh, yeah.
And you have all these kinds of legal issues that you don't know about.
Sure.
You have all these kinds of challenges. And also, at the end of the day, you now have people who depend on you and your company for their livelihood.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a commitment, and it's a promise you're making to those people that you're going to build this company.
Yeah.
So it changes the game. So how do you go from startup, from founding a company, from startup to scale up to big business?
Yeah.
And those are different skill sets.
And you know, what I see too is there's an entirely different mindset when you come from, hey, I worked on a platform team at Microsoft, as you mentioned, to shift into that mode where you're drinking water out of a fire hose every day is a difficult shift sometimes.
And on the other end with that too, at Microsoft, you have a lot of resources.
Yeah, totally.
You can farm out a lot of things. You have entire operations that are there at your disposal with budgets that are obscene. When you're at a startup, it's you.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I've seen some really great people who have come across and joined companies as CTOs, and when they're going through that process, because if they are not already part of the team. After we invest, one of the things we like to do is we actually offer to interview those people and help them pick those people, because a lot of the times you'll have a guy who's like, yeah, I was a CTO at Panasonic.
Yeah.
I don't know where that just came out of my mind, but yes.
That works.
And that's great. If he was in that role and he was actually just farming out a lot of the work to the rest of the team, he doesn't have the skill sets, or she doesn't have the skill sets that you need.
Yeah, because you need a CTO that can get in and actually
code.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's one of those weird things where like, oh, I'm just going to be managing our outsourced development. I'm like, well, you don't have any money. So to do that outsourced development, like what are you building?
Yeah.
You can't manage a division. There is no division. There's you. You are the tech team.
Yep.
So it's a different ballgame.
Yeah. So how much does chemistry of the team come into play? What are you looking for in the chemistry of the people that you are talking to?
One of our questions that we like to ask a lot is, so how long have you known each other? And then we go down the road of, okay, great, where did you meet? How'd you meet? It's totally like that question. It's like, oh, that's so great. You guys just got married. Where'd you meet? What was the engagement story like?
Sure.
It's the same kind of process, because these are worse than investors. They are your absolute partners in this deal.
Sure.
And chances are they own as much as you. Yeah,
essentially.
It is, and it's one that you cannot get divorced from without, just selling everything and destroying the house, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those situations you can't split a baby.
Yep.
And so we want to make sure that, one, the chemistry's there, that you two have worked together. You've dealt with challenges.
I haven't heard that analogy before.
Yeah,
can't split a baby.
You can't split the baby. And they have these. They've overcome adversity together. That's always a big thing, because it's very easy to be friends with someone when they're always happy, there's no challenges, things seem to be going well. The problem is when something hits the fan for one of them, how does the other respond?
Yep.
And when it becomes a roadblock for the both of them, or when one person makes an error that affects the other person, how have they dealt with that? So chemistry is crucial.
Yeah, totally. And so there's got to be a certain level of resilience that you look for in those stories.
Yes.
Okay.
You want to make sure that they made it to the other end. Like, you got past that roadblock.
We just met last week, and we had an issue. We met at the Taco Bell drive-through, and
well, what's funny is I just had my first pitch where when I asked that question, they said, "Yeah, we met on an app," and I'm like, "Okay,
wow.
So how long have you known each other?" It's like about 2 months, and I said, "Okay, tell me about that whole story," and they met on an app. Designed.
Was it one of those swipe right, swipe left apps?
It was. And they came to the understanding that no, they weren't interested in each other romantically. They were interested in each other from a business perspective.
Okay.
And that was a new one for me. I'm still trying to figure out how to address that because...
Yeah, how do you find out compatibility? I mean, whether or not they're going to work well together.
Yeah, I'm not going to trust the swipe right, swipe left method on that.
I know, right?
So it's one of those things I said, great, you're too early for us right now, so we'll track you for 6 months and see how things go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the third element would be what? A plan? somebody has a plan for what they're going
So,
for their team?
In any company that's looking for investment, you're not going to have everyone you need on board the day you come to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we really put a lot of onus on the entrepreneurs to have identified where they're weak and where they're strong. And also, whatever gaps they have in their team right now, which are mission critical and which aren't.
So they really, okay, so you're putting an emphasis on self-introspection
Mm-hmm.
and how they're going to develop.
Well, it's not just self-introspection. It's also, okay, going back to my fintech banking company,
Yeah.
you've never sold to a bank before.
Yep.
So who are you going to hire that's done B2B sales in banking?
Yep.
Because it's a completely different animal. If you've never done that, if you've done B2C, if you've done B2B, it's a completely different animal.
Now, how many of those people actually have somebody identified for that role?
More often, we look at it like that's a great thing to have. So a lot of them have already identified people they've either reached out to, they've had conversations with, they've been chatting with, they've been courting different relationships.
Yeah.
And that is a very strong signal to us that they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because they've already identified, like we have this top sales guy. He does sales for Oracle into the banking world.
Sure.
And he's been doing it for 20 years. And he
and
wants
his
to
Rolodex looks like this.
It's huge.
Yeah, okay. So
and he's she's tired of the big company culture. She wants to get in something where she's getting equity. She's got tons of money, so she's not worried about her salary for the next year. That's a great fit.
Yeah. And he's got a good wound, so he's motivated to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I talk a lot about is career wounds. And
oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. I mean, don't engage people unless they have career wounds. That's just my little plug. All right, let's move
Okay.
on. So the value of a recruiting plan, though, how much of an emphasis is that in your decision to make an investment?
So our methodology follows and circles around milestones,
Okay.
milestone achievements. So in that, when you're raising capital, say you're raising $1 million from us,
Mm-hmm.
we want to know more or less what that million is going to be used for.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily down to the dollar itself, but to have an idea of, okay, great, you're looking to spend $150,000 on new hires, and you're looking to spend $500,000 on marketing and another $250,000 on your platform and so on and so forth.
Sure.
So great. Who are those new hires? And it's really important to have what I really love seeing is an organizational chart of the company with the titles of the people that you need and a priority marker of some sort saying, this is a very high priority that we get this person to be the head of sales because now we have our beta approved and we need to get more customers. Or we're really weak on the tech side. Our CTO was great in the first rendition, but now he's way over his head.
Yeah.
So we need to hire someone who can either be his co-CTO or take over that role and be the developer. You need to identify those, but also identify, okay, this is something we're going to accomplish in the next 3 months.
So the plan is essential.
It is.
It is. Okay. So chemistry, expertise, past experience, and a plan. I mean, those are really the four elements they have to cut into, right? So we're talking to Peter Polydor, founder and CEO of Ergo Capital. We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk through really how maybe you advise some of your executives as you're building these things out, and what they the right way to approach recruiting and how to use a recruiter in doing this. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Higher Power with Rick Girard, giving you access to recruiting techniques that will help you hire key talent to build your company towards real success. Rick is a recruiting executive and entrepreneur who's been successfully recruiting in the aggressive Silicon Valley technology landscape for the past 2 decades. After a very successful stint at Apogee, he founded Stride Search in 2012. Based on a lean efficiency model, Stride has uniquely positioned itself as a leader in retained search for the most critical talent hires within a small organization. Whether you're a startup executive or recruiting professional, by listening to Higher Power with Rick Girard, you will walk away with skills to help you attract and hire great talent. Now back to Higher Power with Rick Girard.
And welcome back to the show. This is the Higher Power Radio Show. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and today our guest is Peter Polydor, founder, CEO of Ergo Capital, and founder of the Eureka building here in Irvine. We just covered kind of the format for what needs to happen when you are, lining up investors. And now we're going to talk about Peter's role in kind of how he advises and from a recruiting perspective, and what a founding team member needs to do before they approach investors. So let's talk about how you advise your executives. You started to get into a little bit before the break, having milestones.
Sure.
So how much kind of key hire involvement are you brought into the process?
From that standpoint, like once we're an investor, even beforehand, you always want a second opinion.
Sure.
At least the kind of entrepreneurs we want to back, they want a second opinion.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Because you want more information versus less whenever you're making a decision that is going to impact your company either positively or potentially negatively.
Yeah.
Because you know better than most that a bad hire is just
so
an anchor on a company's growth. I think you actually even taught me once that one bad hire affects 2 other employees negatively. So you're talking about like if you have a 10-person company startup, right?
Yeah.
10-person company, and one bad hire affects 2. That's 30% of your workforce now is not productive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's an important thing that they ask for that advice. So a lot of the companies will actually come to us and they ask those questions first. So hey, we're now going out for stage 2. We're now going for this piece of it where we're looking to hire a new enterprise salesperson. I like using that term because that's a certain skill set.
Sure.
And one of our companies that we haven't even invested in yet, we're in diligence on tracking. I'm catching up with them again next week. They were building out their team. They've grown from 15 employees. They're going to 35, and they were asking, do I know anyone in these spaces? And they've already hired now one of those people that I forwarded off to them because they were just a good fit and they were someone that I knew and trusted.
Yeah.
And it worked out really well for them. And it has so far. Like now, that person has overperformed what their plan is. So that's one of the things that.
And it works out really good for you as an investor as well.
Yeah, because now I know that I have another point of contact in the company that is really. That I know is going to perform and do well.
And when you get to the VC level, a lot of the VC firms inject like their CFO or somebody who's an EIR into the process at that point as well.
Yeah,
right?
and I feel like that's what you get a lot with Silicon Valley because you've got there's like I look at it like there's 2 types of VCs. You have the type of VC that has $1 billion under management, therefore has a lot of management fees and needs to provide a value for those fees.
Yeah.
And a lot of that time is having EIRs, having in-house marketing teams, having all these
in-house recruiting teams.
Teams. Yeah. Talent acquisition is what they like to title them as, and community builders are the other ones.
Yep.
But that's comes at a cost though. You're going to those big guys. They have to take more of your company and inject more money into it.
Sure.
And that may be more than you need, but you have all these other pieces to it.
Sure.
And depending on which type of VC, and we're the other type, we're more so, we know lots of people in the industries that we invest, and we look for opportunities to help connect them. And at the same, sorry, go ahead.
Now, do you insist upon when you are actually, somebody's in the interview process and they're thinking about making a key hire, are you insisting that, hey, I want to at least meet the person?
Yes.
Okay.
Meet the person. Give you my feedback on the person, depending on who that key hire is. If it's a C-level person, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's your new salesperson, I'll absolutely offer if you want me to be in that interview to give you a second opinion or to meet with the person. But I'm not trying to dictate how you run your company. I'm also not trying to make you feel like you're not working for yourself because you are.
Sure.
The way I always like to describe myself and Ergo is that we are sober second thought. We are your
I like that.
Your advisors that are aligned with your values, that are going to give you advice that we would take ourselves. Because at the end of the day, I always like to say, being an entrepreneur is like standing at the edge of a minefield, seeing a pot of gold across that minefield and deciding, what the hell, I'm going to go across this thing and try and get it. And as investors, I was an entrepreneur, sold a company years ago,
Mm-hmm.
as that role, we want to try to point out, okay, watch out, there's going to be mines over here and mines over there. So that way you have a better chance of getting that pot of gold.
So yeah, so you're basically giving them the metal detector in a way, or at least a half broken one.
Exactly. No one has a metal detector,
Yeah, right.
no matter what they tell you.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah.
So at least they can kind of navigate and look at, or you're educating them a little bit beforehand to look for the little bumps in the sand
Sure.
or whatever. Yeah.
But it's also knowing what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. And for instance, like chatting with you when it comes to the rules around California, the rules around hiring, the rules. Like it's a scary prospect that you need to make
it's
sure that
getting
you have the
scarier.
right advice. I know.
Yeah.
You have the right advice around. I know you new rules you can't even ask certain questions, and that list's getting bigger.
Yeah. As of January, you can't ask people what they're currently making.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is not an important question at all when you're trying to see if they're a fit for your company.
No, not one bit.
Because if someone's making $300,000 and your salary goal is like 75, it's not probably going to make it.
Yeah, exactly. So when somebody's in the recruiting process, when do you instruct them to use a recruiter versus kind of doing it themselves? Like at what point are you kind of bringing an outside third party to help them out?
So,
or are they doing it?
So usually it's a combination, right? We'll make a recommendation, or they'll get to that point when they say like, okay, we need help identifying the right people.
Yeah.
And that typically comes right around like the Series A and Series B. So you're talking about when the company's actually got significant cash for growth, and they're looking to take their team from 5 people to 20.
Sure, a seed-funded company is not going to be able to afford a recruiter.
No, and nor does it make sense.
Nor should they.
Yeah. So. And when you get to that point, because what you're doing is now you're filling out middle management, really.
Yeah.
And top talent too. So
or,
if you're
replacing an executive that isn't quite
exactly. That's what I was about to say. Yeah. So that's or you're dealing with that aspect where someone's outgrown their skill sets as a founder, which is not a bad thing. Like I actually like kudos to founders who realize their limitations and step back from whatever that role is to have a different role that's suited to them, where they're still helping their company out, but they're helping their company. They're not trying to.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
or step away if need be. We had a person on last week that he was one of the founding team members over at Acorns, and they pivoted. They went in a different direction. He left him in a better place, and it was all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's someone who puts the company first.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, if you are a team full of people who put company first, especially on the founding level, then your company has that much higher chance of success.
Yeah. So I'm a company, and I'm thinking, hey, I need to get some money. What should a founding team do once I've got kind of some traction, I've got my seed funding, and I'm kind of ready to go for that Series A? What should I do before I approach you as an investor?
So what's great is if you're that company, you've done the seed, and you're out in the market, so you actually have a customer, maybe 2.
Yeah.
Make sure they're happy customers.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be the first call that we're going to make as investors. Because it's the easiest thing for us to do on diligence. And the example I like to use is if, say, we're investing in automotive technology.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a lot about cars other than how to drive them and some of the basics, if you will.
Sure.
I guarantee you the executive running a division of Ford, who's your customer, knows way more about cars than I do.
Sure.
I'm going to call him and say, why are you using this product?
Yep.
How has the team been? How have they performed? Did they make promises they couldn't deliver, or did they deliver on promise, or did they under promise and over deliver to you? Because these are all signs of a team that is very thoughtful and methodical about how they approach new opportunities and growth.
Sure.
So that's one.
Okay.
2 is if you're raising this money, have a very clear picture as to what you're going to spend it on. And if a big portion of that, which most likely will be, is on new people, have those roles identified, including what you expect that job description to be. Not necessarily written out, but what are the 3, 4, 5 things that each person needs to have to fit that role?
I would take that just a step further. Actually, define out what the actual work is, like what they're going to be doing in maybe the first 60, 90 days, what they need to accomplish. And then taking it a step further from the perspective of making sure that they start to identify some people that might be target people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just put in a little bit of work on what that ideal person looks like.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I was
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
beforehand. Like, make sure if you know what that role is, and you're already talking to those people, that's great.
Yeah,
It just makes it so much easier, because now you know that there's interest, one, in your company from people who are already out in the industry and are willing to take that risk.
yeah,
Which, again, great sign to us that people are willing to leave their cushy job at Oracle to come work for your little software company.
yeah.
So it has those different pieces of it.
Now, how do you feel about hiring buddies? I have a buddy who does this.
Hiring buddies. So
This is always like kind of a fun subject, right?
so
I have
You know,
a friend who I've known for a bunch of years, and he kind of can do this job, we think, but you know.
that's when you have to ask the question to yourself and honestly answer it. How good of a buddy is this person? Is this someone that you hang out with occasionally, you've met, but you're not actually like super close as friends?
Yeah.
That's less scary to me than this guy's one of my best friends, because what happens is innately you are running this company and you're hiring someone. Doesn't matter if they've been your buddy for 10 years or you met them on the street, they're now your employee.
Yep.
And that opens up a whole host of things. And I
it's
say,
huge host of
but the
things.
thing is,
Yeah.
typically you know someone for a period of time before you hire them.
Sure.
Taylor Decker, who runs Eureka, I'd known her for years beforehand because she was running the office of a nonprofit that I was on the board of.
Okay.
And that nonprofit was there was an opportunity for me essentially to offer her a job.
So you recruited her.
I recruited her.
Nice.
Yes, and she's been absolutely awesome, and she's really stretched. Like she's fit into this role because that was not necessarily her skill set beforehand. But these kinds of people, you just need to find the right attitudes and the right skill sets and the desire to learn. Because if you're surrounded by people who want to constantly be learning more, that means that they're improving their skill sets. They're getting better at what they do. They can take on more responsibility because the things that used to take them hours of time are now taking them minutes.
Oh yeah.
And it's just a wonderful thing.
Oh, absolutely.
You just have to make sure that you reward them because they are achieving those goals, and you have to give them more opportunities to stretch and learn.
Yeah. And which is easier said than done.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'd have a lot more successful startups, I would imagine. All right. So takeaways. What would you, having the plan is such a key thing, and also, knowing where you're going with the people that you're trying to hire is just.
It's true, and the thing I want to stress, because even on these, like talking about hiring a friend, or I know this guy, or this person's really great, just be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Don't try. You know what is needed. Don't try and create a position for someone at your company that doesn't really help your company.
Oh yeah.
But understand what the position is and whether that person can really provide what's needed, and also, and if they can't, they can learn what's needed.
Yeah.
And that's equally as important, because if you're teaching someone, you don't have to correct bad habits. You're creating the habits that fit your culture and your company.
Well, and you should essentially be able to make sure that they're committed to it as well. I mean, that they really need it more than.
Sorry, one of my big things is always aligning of interests.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have people heading the same route and on board with the same plan, you're going to have issues.
Yeah.
And I've written about this too, where it's a lot like getting across a river. And if you're leading your team and your goal is to get to the tree that's across the river, you have to fight the current. And there's lots of ways you can do it. But the idea is, as long as you can tell your team that's the goal, that's where we're heading to,
yeah,
they'll find other ways to get there.
Yeah.
But as long as they are aligned with that target and that is your goal, hey, they might find a better way to do it than you will. And that's why you need to listen to your team and make sure you have good people around you.
Such great advice today. So we're just about out of time for today's show. Peter, thanks so much for your time and investment today, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio community. Man, hopefully I'll get my tongue to work at some point today. But now, I'm sure there's going to be people listening that are going to want to reach out to you. That maybe are looking for investment or interested in the Eureka building. How do they reach you?
Oh, well, the easiest thing is, especially because we have the accelerator or the capital page, just go to ergo.vc.
Okay.
ergo.vc. And that'll take you to our main page.
.com.
.vc. Like
.vc.
venture
Okay,
capital.
Sorry.
We also have ergocapital.com, but
Okay.
it just leads you right to it. And you can apply for the accelerator, or you can reach out to us on the contact page.
Sounds great. So I want to thank our listening audience for tuning in today to today's episode of Higher Power. Quick shout out to our team, our engineer Paul Roberts, our producers Andrea Ballin, Shanti Ryle, and our executive producer Kim Iverson. To listen to this show or any past episodes, you can check out Higher, that's H-I-R-E, we're not a religious show, powerradio.com, or Higher Power Radio on iTunes. For the latest insights on the show, follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn. Or you can follow me on Twitter, and that's at Rick_Girard. So tune in next week. Our guest on the show is going to be Robert Davis, founder and CEO of Y7 Collective and Communities for Causes. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power with Rick Girard on OC Talk Radio.